Good morning. It is Saturday, and like I promised you guys, I would get you your very first Duffy lecture of the year. And by the way, welcome to my kitchen. This is probably where I'll do most of my recording, either in my kitchen or maybe one day I'd like to show you guys my living room. But this is my kitchen. I'm at the kitchen table. It's Saturday morning. I'm taking a break from cleaning, made myself a second cup of coffee, and got ready to sit down and talk to you guys. So what you are seeing is my screen here at home, and I am going to record what's on my screen. So you're going to be able to see it, hear me talk about it, and then you're going to be taking notes about it eventually. Right now, if you're choosing to take notes, that's great, fantastic. If you're not choosing to take notes, please be aware that eventually I'm going to have you take notes. So I'm going to review with you guys a little bit about what we were talking about this week, and I'm just going to move myself to the corner here for now because then we can't really see what I want to talk about. So at the beginning of the week, we kind of went over the Reconstruction amendments, and we talked about now that the Civil War is over, we have to find a way to put the North and South back into one country. The Union and the Confederacy have to come back together, and that's a difficult process. And so one of the first things that they agreed to is that, the first thing, is that the 13th Amendment should be passed, and that should pretty much ban slavery. So if you see it, right, I don't know if you can see where my mouse is. The 13th Amendment bans slavery. What that essentially means is that slavery is illegal. It's outlawed. You're not allowed to have slavery at all, period, end of discussion. Then they think for a while that that's working, that's a good thing, that it's helping, and then they realize that just because slavery is over, it doesn't necessarily mean that African Americans are getting equal rights, or that they are citizens, or that it's granted them citizenship. So the 14th Amendment is necessary and needed to give citizenship to all people born in the U.S., which means all former slaves. But ladies, I apologize again. This is for men only. Citizenship is granted to only men. Equal rights under the law are granted to only men. And this covers anyone born in the United States and also people who go through the naturalization process. You'll learn more about naturalization in 8th grade civics. But it basically means if you are willing to go through a rigorous process to become part of the United States, then you'll be allowed to come in. So for a while, everything's good, everything works, and then they realize that there, again, is a flaw in the 14th Amendment, and that citizenship is not protecting the right to vote of former slaves. So they need the 15th Amendment. And the thing that you have to remember is the thing that's right here. I wish I had a highlight. Guys, remember, I'm still learning Google along with you. I know there's a highlighter feature somewhere. I just have to figure out the program that uses it. These 3 amendments guarantee equal protection under the law for all citizens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload these notes into Google Classroom for you also, so that you have them moving forward, so that these are not just exclusive to the video. Usually I have a PowerPoint for you that I talk over, except that for some odd, strange reason, the PowerPoints have all been deleted from my OneDrive, so I have to go find them. And I have a feeling I know where they are. I have to just go retrieve them, which I can't do because they're at work and I'm in my kitchen. So after we talked about the Reconstruction amendments, we moved on and we started talking more about what are the things that happen during Reconstruction, and what are the things that happen as a result of Reconstruction. And I told you, and I still stand by this, Reconstruction is a colossal failure. It fails because if Reconstruction were successful, a lot of I believe, and I would argue against almost anybody, this is not a challenge. Second period, do not take it as a challenge. I would argue that the race issues that we have in this country today, and the discrimination and the outright racism, stems from the Reconstruction failures to protect equality and to establish equality for African Americans during Reconstruction and beyond. So we talked about the black codes, which are not on here, but the black codes are important because they are that first step towards white Southerners trying to regain their power and hold down former slaves, and to keep them in that I can't own you, but you are still not equal to me kind of mentality. And black codes are a result of a few different things that happen. And we didn't really get into detail with this because I knew I was going to get into detail here, so I didn't want to bore you at school. Southern military leaders, if you were a former Confederate, you were not allowed to hold public office. You could not run for Senate. You could not run for the House of Representatives. You could not even run to be mayor of your town. If you were a former Confederate, you could not hold political office because they didn't trust you. Big issue for former Confederates is now they can't, their hands are essentially tied. They can't do anything further to further the Confederate cause or to prove to the nation, hey, I'm a reformed human. To add insult to injury, now with the 14th and 15th Amendments, African Americans are now allowed to hold public office. So those seats in government that were taken up by former Confederates are now being taken by Union sympathizers in the South and African Americans, who, now that the 15th Amendment guarantees voting equality and voting rights, African Americans are voting for people who look like them, who've been through the same ordeals and situations, who they can sympathize with. So because of these two things together, and the Civil Rights Act, I'm pointing at the screen. I do this all the time. I point at the screen like you guys can see me. So if we're looking here at the third bullet point, African Americans gain equal rights as a result of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. These three things together, not being able to hold public office, African Americans being able to hold public office, the Civil Rights Act, which was supposed to guarantee equality and equal rights and failed, hence the 14th Amendment, all forced Southern towns and Southern states to pass black codes because they saw that their way of life, they felt threatened that their way of life was disappearing and going away, and they wanted to desperately cling to that as long as they could possibly do that. So in order for them to do that, the black codes were passed. Also part of Reconstruction, to add insult to injury, the Northern military, the former Union soldiers who shot at Confederates for 4 years, are now occupying or living in the South. So the orange, teal, yellow, purple, red are military districts where the Northern military came and occupied and babysat the South while it was in the middle of Reconstruction and putting itself back together. So now you have Union soldiers from the North coming in who know nothing about the Southern way of life and are now telling you, well, your slaves are free. You have to treat them with kindness. You have to treat them with equality. You can't do anything about them leaving. So the South sees its way of life and its everything disappearing, and the people that they're blaming are the former slaves, because if they would have just stayed, none of this would have been a problem. And also, in addition to Northern soldiers coming down, you had Northern people, the carpetbaggers, if you will, who, that's the guy that's on your notes too. This guy, he looks kind of creepy, you know, sinister, like, I'm going to come steal your children in the middle of the night kind of dude. They're carpetbaggers. They're not really nice people. They give Northerners like me a bad name. And they're people who came to the South after the Civil War and tried to take advantage of the South. They used to come and jack up the prices of food and clothing and necessities because, hey, why not? We talked about the Freedmen's Bureau in class. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. I mean, it's important, but we're going to talk really in more detail about it at the end of the week. And then finally, we come to the end of Reconstruction. I told you Reconstruction was super short, about 12 years. Reconstruction ends in 1877 after 12 years, and it's the result of a compromise that the South says, listen, we want our candidate to win. The North says, no, we're going to have our candidate win. You're going to vote for who we tell you to vote for, and in exchange, we might forget about the Civil War and the damage you cause. South's like, no, let's make a deal. And the South says, hey, listen, we'll vote for your guy, but in order for you to get your guy as president, you need to, that's my text message, you need to basically get out of the South, get out of our territory, get out of our states, let us put ourselves back together our way. We know what you expect, we know what you want, but we're going to do it our way and in our time. The North says, you know what, fair deal. South does not hold up its end of the bargain once the soldiers leave. The black coats go away and they're replaced by what you may or may not already know as Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws are significantly more harsh, significantly more oppressive. They are definitely meant to punish African Americans, not just hold them down. It's now meant to punish them. We're going to get into Jim Crow laws in more detail at a later point in the class, but I want you to understand that the black codes go away when Reconstruction ends and they're replaced by Jim Crow laws. And then last but certainly not least, you've got these three handsome men. You've got Abraham Lincoln. His legacy is that he calls for the end of the Civil War. He wants everyone to love each other. You know, cue the song, Why Can't We Be Friends? And Abraham Lincoln gets shot because he doesn't want to punish the South. And there are Northerners who don't like that, and they want him dead because they think that the South should be punished. And so he gets shot at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. by a guy, John Wilkes Booth. After shooting Lincoln, Booth jumps out of the balcony where Lincoln is watching the play, breaks his leg, and manages to escape on a broken leg before he's discovered a few hours later. Robert E. Lee, you know Lee as the guy from the General of the Confederacy. Really cool story about Lee. If I don't get a chance, because I have like a minute and a half left on this video before it's going to cut me off, remind me to tell you about Lee. Lee's got an interesting, really cool story to him. He says to the South, listen, bygones are bygones. We're going to move on. Everybody's going to be happy. And you're just going to join the back into the Union we lost, accept it, and whatever they're asking you to do, make sure that you do it. And then last but never, ever, ever least is Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was the one who really fought for the Reconstruction Amendments. And moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit more about Frederick Douglass. He was born a free man and spent his life and his career fighting for equal rights for African Americans during and after slavery. That is it for this one. This one was short by my standards. Sometimes the videos will be about 2 videos long, so about 30 minutes. If you have any questions or you can't see the video, well, again, never mind. If you have any questions, hit me up on Google Classroom. If I don't get back to you, it's because Mr. Duffy is off today and we are going to be running a bunch of errands after I do something with this disgusting hair. Okay, have a good weekend and I will see you guys on Monday. Ooh, I almost spilled my coffee.